Good evening, everyone. This is the February 16, 2016 regular meeting of the Woodbridge Board of Selectmen. Our primary goal this evening is to make recommendations to the Board of Finance for the fiscal year 2017 budget for the town of Woodbridge. But before we do that, we have one preliminary item on the agenda, and that is a tax refund. This came in a little too late for our last meeting, and it was a substantial tax refund, so we're taking it up this evening. Is there a motion that we approve the refund of property taxes in the amount of $8,261.85 as recommended by the tax collector?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll now turn to item 2 on the agenda, which is taking up the budget for the next fiscal year. Tony, would you like to begin?
Okay. There's a number of sheets that were sent to you. I want to just review a few of them to sort of frame the discussion for the budget recommendations for this evening. The first is the budget summary, which is this sheet here, and this provides you with an estimate of the requested budget and the impact on the mill rate, which would for the requested budget was 6.88 increase over the previous year, or a mill rate of 40.25. And then there's the Board of Selectmen recommended, which is the next column over, and that with some preliminary recommendations is at 39.54 or a 4.99% increase. So as you deliberate this evening, I can recalculate that at any point with any other suggested changes that you may have. So this is just a starting point for you. It's made up of expenditures and revenues, which you can see there. And the other piece of information that's important here is the grand list, which it's one line for that sheet, but there's a tax calculation sheet which sort of breaks that up into various categories. You can see that the real estate grand list went up 0.38%, and that's the sheet here. This is our tax that's the tax rate, so you can see sort of the impact the grand list had on the budget. The personal property went down 3.13%. Motor vehicle and motor vehicle supplement, this is before the cap, as we're still trying to figure out exactly how that's implemented and how that factors into the budget. So for now, we're just doing it without the cap, and that's a 0.05%, pretty much a flat motor vehicle supplement. And the Regional Water Authority pilot went up 2.72%. So you could see then the two reserves we have are for uncollected taxes and for the elderly tax program that we have here. And that's essentially, we take an average of the past few years as a guide to where we set those reserves at. So that gives you an adjusted grand list of 0.29%. So you can follow, it's pretty flat growth there.
So as Tony said, this sets the framework, and following this, we'll go through department by department. But before we do that, are there questions for Tony about either of these documents?
Tony, the only question I have is on the grand list that reserved for the hourly tax. So that's a rolling average?
Correct.
And,
so we take the activity in the program, and we figure, based on that and what the information of Betsy's office, what we think it will need to fund.
So there's been a pretty substantial change over the last few years.
It's been declining in its use over the past few years.
Reserve for uncollected taxes. Can you
Certainly.
explain
That's we have to reserve extra funds through the grand list process for those who don't pay their taxes. So that's for people who don't pay their real estate bills or.
And what percentage do we use?
We use, I've got it right here actually. It's 99.5, I think. It's been the rate the last few years.
So 0.5% uncollected?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about 99.5.
Yeah, that makes sense, because
Yeah.
I know we've been told that we have very high
Correct.
collections. I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah,
And that's standard accounting practice that you would keep that reserve.
correct,
As
yeah,
a- Yeah, as a budget issue, yeah.
yeah. It's common in every municipality.
Anything else? If not, why don't we turn to the budget documents? And what I've suggested to Tony is that we will go through department by department. I sat with Tony and we tried to look at every single department and see where we could make savings. As we've talked about before, it's a tough budget year. We have the Amity Board of Ed increase over which we have no control, and it's partly because of the change in our proportion of students. We also have the Beecher debt coming online this year, and we have the potential issue with the state car tax cap, which may be a problem for us. So it is a tough budget year, and we look very closely at every department. So as we go through them, I'll ask Tony actually to mention any significant changes. Some are minor, but we just look to save money wherever we could. And as we go through them, please, if you have any questions or suggestions, if you want to make additional cuts or you think the cuts are too deep, or any comments at all. So the first department is Board of Selectmen, or minor changes.
I just want to get you the exact figure, Joe. It's 99.55.
Thanks.
Okay.
So when you have a numbers person. Okay, any questions or comments on the Board of Selectmen budget? No, seeing none. Probate court?
It's really a set thing, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Right, there's
Yeah.
nothing great, because it's not even here anymore.
Town clerk, and I would mention also, it is a tribute to Tony and how he works with all the departments, that it's not easy to make cuts, because people come in with very reasonable budgets, and we've tried to identify areas where there are items that are not necessary or can be delayed, but I do want to thank again Tony and his department, but also all of our departments for coming in with such serious and thoughtful budgets. So, town clerk's office, anything?
No. Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
But we're talking about operating budget here. Will we have an opportunity later to talk about the capital budget for, because some of these departments, I do have questions on the capital.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
Did you want
Okay.
the capital
No, you
first?
could do either one first, it doesn't matter.
No, that's fine. I'm just so I know, I'll hold
We
my
will do
questions for
capital,
those later.
Are we hiring new people? Is that what it is?
In the town clerk's office?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, no, oh, town clerk, sorry, no.
No.
Sorry,
No.
sorry.
Registrar of Voters,
There's not much change. No.
Government Access Television, General Administration.
Okay, here.
Did you have something, Maria?
No, it's just totally, it's not the same area.
Information Systems. Finance Department.
What does banking mean here? What is that?
Banking is, we used to, this is what we have to pay for our bank fees for all the town accounts. Because the lending rates are the rates are so low, the interest earnings credit that we get for our money being in the bank, so essentially the float, if you will, for when we deposit money, then we take money out and put it into our investments. So it doesn't stay in the bank all that long, but there was always a fee, a service charge, yeah. Used to be, when interest rates were higher, it was zero usually,
Yeah, I
but-
was surprised.
yeah.
Anything else on finance? Tax collector. Tax assessor. Board of Assessment Appeals. Board of Finance.
I need to understand this contingency figure again.
Sure.
If you would explain that,
I'd be happy to.
thank you.
The contingency contains unanticipated or expenditures that are, typically it's for unanticipated expenditures. Our historical average for contingency is about $200,000.
Right.
That's typical, in a typical year, we'd have a balance of about $200,000. Because we're in contract negotiations, you could see that none of the departments have salary increases in them, or cost of living increases, I should say. And because we haven't settled contracts.
Where are we
And
with
that's,
that?
just, I want to just follow up on that. There's actually 2 years worth of unsettled contracts. So it's not just for 1 year here, because oftentimes it's going to involve 2 years if there's a retroactive component to it.
Where are we with that? I mean, when do we settle those?
We hope to be settling those.
They're gonna, 2 years are gonna be settled all at once?
Correct. Could be a 3-4 year, depends how long the contract is.
Okay.
We'll get settled at some point, hopefully in the near future.
And is this our only contingency fund for all departments?
Correct.
Okay.
So it'd be for all departments within the town, except for obviously the Board of Ed, would be for this account. So I'm hopeful that when we go through the process with the Board of Finance, as they go through the process and by the budget hearing, we'll have much better information to be able to calculate that more,
Yeah,
that
because
figure.
I was thinking if it was for salaries, so why don't we have a salary contingency? I mean, a line item for that, so that we know that it's gonna be definitely for that, and then the other things.
Because we are not sure what the amount will be,
Okay.
and so we want to typically
Keep that
keep it in
open?
contingency.
Okay, I got it. All right.
Anything else on Board of Finance? Town Plan and Zoning. Zoning Board of Appeals. The Center. Former Fire Station. Country Club of Woodbridge.
Well, when is the Casper thing over?
December.
December of
Of-
this year.
Correct. So there's one payment of $45,000 that's due in September.
Okay, and then.
So that's like the last
and then
half of
the other
it.
45 goes
So,
with?
so that's the last payment due.
Oh.
That's why there's a $45,000 budget for golf course expense.
Okay,
So there's no provision in this budget for any expenditures related to the golf course for the
After that.
spring.
okay.
So that's something you have to consider, whether or not there will be expenditures related to the course, upkeep of the course, or any other related expenditures.
And we need to decide on that. When?
Well, you could fund it a number of ways, but to put it in the budget, it would have to be decided by, unless the Board of Finance would take it up at a later date if for some reason you don't have any suggestions at this point,
Okay, just wanted to know.
you know. But
Anything else?
There's no, and then the utilities, some of the utilities are for a full year, depending, like for heat, for instance, and electricity
That goes on for.
is modified for half a full, through December, normal rate, and then some minimal use for the spring, and same with the water and the telephone,
Got it.
that sort of thing. So it's sort of scaled back expenditures for the spring, for the building. Also doesn't have anything in here for any sort of upkeep other than average, or things that sort of are maintained on a regular basis. Doesn't include any, as indicated at your last meeting, any
I see.
other repairs that you may want to do.
Anything else on Country Club? Not, Police Department? Anything?
Well, Police department, that's the big one. Have we settled on a new chief? I mean, have they come up with a new chief?
The search committee is doing interviews now.
Oh, okay. I was just thinking that perhaps because we have a new chief, that maybe, you know, this whole police administration might be, I don't know, looked over, or I don't know.
So for the next budget year, that would certainly make sense, because
That
you're gonna
would
have
be
new
the next
leadership
year?
and a new budget year, but for this budget year,
Yeah,
you know, this is where we are with this, so I
Okay.
get what you're saying, but that's gonna be the next budget year.
Okay,
that-
I got
That
you.
kind of review is
Mhm.
more likely than not gonna be
Yeah.
under consideration.
Plus, it's really the police commission, you know, presenting this to us
all right.
with help from the current deputy chief.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But what does longevity mean?
Longevity is, per the contract, the longer you're here employed as a police officer with the town, you get an incentive payment to remain with the town to
I see.
maintain an experienced force. It's a percentage of your salary depending on how long you've been here.
Oh, so there's okay.
Yeah.
That's it. And college incentives, what does that mean?
Again, that's a contractual item, and you get an extra percent in your pay if you have a
College degree?
college degree,
I
right?
got you.
Associates is a certain percent,
I
and
see.
then there's a percentage for a bachelor's.
I got it.
Trying to pull that up here. Yeah,
Anything else on police department?
contractual.
50430 overtime.
Yes.
How is it we were able to
So
make that adjustment?
historically, we whenever we overspend overtime, we have a surplus in wages, because oftentimes it's as a result of a staffing issue. That's historically worked that way majority of the time. If you look at this sheet here, for the police department, for instance, the last 2 years, you will notice that the while the overtime is over the budget, the salary lines are far under what the budget is for salaries. So that's typically how this has been funded in the past, acknowledging the fact that you typically have a surplus in wages, but you fully, if you have to fully fund the salary line if you want to have fill each position.
So it looks like you kept the salaries up
Yeah, correct.
and
But
brought the overtime down.
correct, right,
Whereas the request was up and up.
correct,
Yeah.
Okay. Yes,
right.
Anything else? Okay. Fire commission. Anything on fire? On the fire commission, I should say.
Yeah, I should go first.
I don't think
Going to
we
go over
made
some of the major.
We didn't make any changes in this one.
The fire commission, we made
We
one.
did, actually.
A few. The major change was in the capital machinery
Machinery?
line. Yeah, there was a
14.
A
Was
simulator?
that the
Yeah, it's a
capital
fire
outlay
simulator.
for the, right, for the
That
the
thing.
practice,
That
it was
big-
14,000 change.
correct,
Big thing.
Yeah.
correct. That was the item that we
And
felt
it-
maybe could
Capital outlay.
could wait.
Yeah.
Right, and
future
again,
year.
this was not an indication in talking about it that we thought it was not something that could be useful, but something that could wait.
Yeah. And the only other thing I saw was a slight adjustment to the gas.
Yeah, I did that in all the departments. You'll notice
Yes.
if you look through them. Yeah.
And also, there were salary increases here, which we've taken out and recommended just waiting until
Till
the
the-
contracts are
correct.
complete,
Right.
and then they would get
And
the
then they
same
would get
You
the
increase.
same.
didn't do, there were no, most other departments didn't have.
Correct,
so we just-
right. So we followed the same assumptions.
Anything else? Medical services,
What's general professional service?
That's the contract with AMR.
okay, animal control.
That's a gas adjustment, it turns out to be. Yeah.
Building department. Public works.
There
Do you
were
want to explain about the sweeper here?
certainly, yeah. There are two items in here. One is a reduction in the tree budget.
Where is that?
That's in 53610.
536.
It's rentals and equipment.
So it's because it's rentals on because it's a contract. It's essentially those are all contracted services. So the first one was the trees, and the second was Warren had requested the sweeper. So also in that line is $19,000 for street sweeping, which, as Warren indicates, he would not need to contract with a vendor if we purchase a sweeper. So this budget reduces that by $19,000 for sweeping, and then $10,000 for tree work, which is the $29,000 reduction that you see here.
So when we get to the capital discussion, should we decide not to purchase the sweeper,
Then you have to add the
19,000 needs
right.
to come back into
Right.
operating.
Yep.
And last year, if I believe it was higher, we happened to pay 19,000 this year, but the year before it was 20-something, almost.
Correct. It's higher this year, yeah. He reduced that a little.
So in theory, next year, it will be, if we buy the sweeper, that number won't exist anymore. as a-
Correct. Right, right.
As a
Because he
vendor.
won't need to hire a vendor to help sweep the town.
Okay, there's highway maintenance and road maintenance. What highways are we talking about?
Highway maintenance for sand and salt.
Oh, salt,
Yeah,
that's the salt.
it's cut off there. It should probably say sand and salt as opposed to highway maintenance. That's a good point.
Okay,
But that's for purchasing sand and salt.
yeah,
And then road maintenance is for maintenance
asphalt.
that
and so-
exists for during the year if there's any road issues that he has to address. That's not part of his
Paving,
paving.
Paving,
Potholes,
Okay,
drainage
gotcha.
issues,
Ruts.
ruts, yeah, that kind of stuff.
Safety.
Yeah.
Also, I noticed that in public works, there's electric street and stop, I don't know what that means, light? Is that what
Lights,
it
stop
is?
lights, yeah. Those are street lights,
There's
basically.
a $48,000 there, and on, what is this? There's another one back, I think this must be, I don't know, this is second page of something. But there's a 10,212 in another budget for electric street and stop. Are there two accounts for that?
Are you talking about the,
I don't know what.
so this
I-
is
it
for,
doesn't
this is
tell
for
me.
mainly all the street lights.
Huh?
That's for all of the street lights.
Yeah, but you have 10,000 on one budget and the
Where's it,
other.
which other one are you referring
What's the
to?
line item? If you
It's
say-
55223.
Yes, and what's the other one? 55,
It's the same, 55223. Oh, see, I got this from another
Oh, you
thing.
Oh,
got,
in
that's
the
the
fire
back part of the
Yeah,
police.
that's the
Oh, this is for the
second half.
police. Okay, fine. So there's police and public works.
Right,
Why
the
are
police
they-
is basically for, even though it says electric street and stoplight, that's mainly for the electricity that's paid for the repeater.
What's a repeat?
It's down on Bradley Road,
Okay,
and it's part of the radio system. And
Oh.
they do pay for some of the blinking lights they pay for.
that's in the police budget.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's also, as I recall, isn't it also for the "you're going too fast" sign that they always point at
The
Tony's
portable
car?
one that goes around.
The
Yeah.
portable one.
Yeah.
Right.
But isn't
Yeah.
that for research for them? Oh, I don't know.
But most of it's for the repeater electricity.
And I think he explained to us that it was going up because for some of the past few years, we didn't have the full
Correct.
payment.
That we didn't
The
have the
what?
funding
We
for
didn't-
We
it.
weren't really having to pay maybe the full amount, and now we would be paying our share of it.
I just thought it was curious to have,
Yeah.
a different.
It should probably be
When he was here
retitled.
for the
Your
budget.
their title's probably not
Right,
accurate.
yeah. Okay, great, thanks. Thank you.
anything else on public works? Okay, all right, waste management? Anything there? Remediation?
Where's that remediation?
First, we have a few monitoring wells that we're still testing back
the
here for the
oil
From-
wells.
I think
The
it was
gas-
from the big spill
gasoline spill.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
behind town.
Way
Place,
back.
right? Way
Yeah.
back when.
Two-
two
Every year it
monitoring
goes
wells
down, which is good,
still.
just less and
Okay.
less wells
Yeah.
too, right?
Good.
That's
And
correct.
you were able to cut that a couple thousand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Someday it'll be zero, maybe. Knock on wood, right?
right.
Right.
Hopefully.
We're at the building
Keep
maintenance
moving.
budget. Any questions or anything on this one? Human services.
You see that basically we're cutting out furniture and fixtures
Correct.
from most of these.
For a lot of the
Whatever we can.
departments, yeah.
requests, right?
Yeah.
Recreation department. Nothing on that.
Well, there was one adjustment I noticed on the director.
Mhm.
It was a slight reduction from the department request.
Correct.
How did we get to that amount?
The department request was about a 33% increase. And it's really just a matter of scrubbing the budget and seeing where we could make some adjustments. We think that John Adamovich does a fabulous job, and that this is a very substantial increase as recommended here.
And on the assistance as well, there was a slight adjustment,
Sa-
15.
Same thing.
Same
Yeah.
thing. Mhm.
And then the only other adjustment I saw you made was banking, which is fine, because I think that presumed originally on their request that that would have been if they took 100%
Yeah,
online.
I changed some of the
It's
So
assumptions
it was-
and
it was-
just,
yeah, it was
I just refined it a little.
Okay.
So the request from John is 42, we're proposing 40.
Right.
When was the last time he was
Even a
raised?
raise?
Well, he gets a cost of living, as you understand, each year, like the
Yeah.
rest of the staff.
Right.
But an actual increase over and above that, I'd have to research. I don't know that offhand.
Seems they made this request because there wasn't one for a long time.
That could be. I just don't.
I
I don't recall
also-
one since I've been here.
Yeah, I also just remember, since we're on the topic, I remember, and I don't remember the exact figures, but I saw a handout or a sheet with similar town recreation directors, and I remember thinking at the time that the request of 42 was ultra reasonable in light of
It was
those.
actually
so-
light. It was light, yeah.
That's what I mean by ultra reasonable. So I'm kind of wondering why we're finding that $2,000 here versus
Some other
somewhere
place.
else in our $48 million budget.
Budget.
Oh, it's open for
Not
discussion.
that
Would you
I
like
want to spend money, because I'll get to that later. but
It's not,
I'm just talking
it's
about
not easy.
42,000 for a guy who's been here for 30 years and
It really works
I don't know,
almost
I-
24/7. Yeah.
it's not sitting
Anyway.
all that well with me.
well,
I don't know what we do about that.
you can, this is up for discussion. This is, if you'd like to put it back, we can put it back up to 42,000 if that's the
Yeah, I mean,
sense of the board.
I would make that proposal. I mean,
I have sort of a generic question, actually, on that. Sometimes we approve a stipend. Does that get wrapped into the salary line? We don't treat
Yes.
stipends separately.
No,
they're
it gets
just-
wrapped into the salary.
It gets
line.
wrapped into the salary line.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Did he get a stipend this past year?
He did.
If I recall?
$2,500.
Right, that's-
2,500?
That's what I remember.
I'm pretty sure it's
So that
25.
probably, that projected budget's probably gonna go up a little.
So is it the sense of the board, would you like to move it back up to 42,000?
I
there's-
strongly,
this is not set-
strongly feel that. Yeah.
Based on the discussions I heard about it at the commission, as well as the, what Joe was pointing out was the comparisons to
Other towns.
similar position in other towns, and the fact that it hasn't been in a long time, I would like to go back to the 42,
At least, yes.
but
Well, this is their department request of 42. I would make it 42. I don't think I would do more than they're asking.
no, I'm going,
No, I'm
I
just-
so I said
Maria
go back
said
to
at
that's
least, and I'm
fine.
thinking.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I think
I would
I
go
don't
back to
wanna
the
go above.
recommendation, no, I would go back to the
I think
recommendation of the
42 is
commission.
good.
Yeah.
You know, these are suggestions.
Right.
Tony and I worked on this to
I'll take their
look at
request.
Whatever,
every
yeah.
line, so that's fine, so we'll change that to 42.
Yep, that's fine, no problem.
Okay. Pool and gym expense, anything on
The
that?
only highlight I want to mention here is that the pool no longer has a separate heating unit. And as you may have remember from the discussion of the budget, so
And this
that's
is
paid
the
for by,
Beecher, just to be clear, it's the Beecher Road School.
correct, the
Right.
Beach Road
Is that
School
what
pool.
it
And so the heat comes from the north, from the heating plant. That's why there's no oil heat here.
Anything on that? Parks Department.
Oh, can I ask about the pool? How's that new system working out? Do you know, any reports, Ellen?
The
Or
reports are terrific.
Great.
The new filter system.
that was
People say it's
donated
just
by the
wonderful.
Woodbridge Aquatic Club?
Yes, and
Good.
people, yeah, I know you had concerns.
People are clean.
Good, and there's no
Very
that odor and, less
Yeah.
less chlorine, which is wonderful.
Right.
Good.
Right, and asthmatic swimmers are having a much better time.
Great.
So far, it's
Good,
working
good.
really well.
I thank you for the update.
Yep.
Great.
Parks Department?
Same thing, you just reduced the capital a little.
Right.
Okay.
What makes that up for parks?
That was the, there's 2 items in there. One was the trees on, at the center field parking lot. And the other was capping the parking lot with stone dust at the new playground. That's the 3,000 I took out because there's a few $1,000s left in the budget for the playground. So,
Anything else on parks? Country Club Pool. Tony, do you want to speak to this? Actually, there were no changes here from what was in the budget that you all saw. So, does this include the towels?
I think it includes
Yes.
towels. It's like 9,000, as I recall, right?
it's
There was
correct,
purchasing
between
of
the,
towels and then
and the gas.
the gas to
Correct.
clean the towels.
That's
and
correct.
stuff.
And also, it's sort of not the same assumption as the country club, which was that there's no activity in the spring. This has activity for the spring. I just want you to understand
So
that this is
pool
It's a
goes
full-
on.
correct. This funding assumes that the pool will then go on next spring with this budget.
Any-
Right. So we're all on the same
Vote-
page.
If we vote for the
Budget.
budget, we're voting for the
Pool.
pool budget and to proceed.
Right.
Actually, the pool.
The budget actually, that's a little bit of a interesting definition. What this budget proposes is that both, I want to make it clear for the public, both the pool and the golf would operate for the entire year, calendar year, until the end of December. We're not proposing, this is not showing the budget, anything past that for golf, going back to the golf.
Or the pool.
But the pool
does.
has
It
a
does
full
show it
season,
for the
so it
pool.
goes past into the following
That's
calendar year.
correct.
That's right. I just wanted to clarify for anybody who's
Now,
trying.
one other thing for the pool that I'd like to bring up is that Anthony, when he made his budget presentation, had about, the numbers didn't exactly add up, but it was like $24,500 worth of expenses that he didn't put in his pool budget, but that were supposed to be in the pool budget. I remember this discussion.
Because it was sort of like,
Right.
yeah, the golf, it was for
Because
golf, really.
he,
or something.
the assertion was that these were related to the clubhouse
Clubhouse,
in the
yeah.
golf operation. And whether they are or not,
Yeah.
the fact is, that's where they were in the budget.
Yeah.
So,
And also, wasn't it true that there were other expenses that were not attributed to the
Correct,
pool? And had we
yeah.
changed them, it would have been even more. So are you included that 28,000? in these
no,
numbers?
they're not.
So it's
You'd have to
really
add them in.
28,000 more?
Right.
This is what we saw that night without the numbers.
Right, so it's
Correct.
really 28,000.
It's,
But
More
I think a
inexpensive.
clarification is necessary to the point, I don't know where I heard it, that by voting on this budget, we're voting on the pool. And that's not completely correct. We're voting on this budget as a budget issue. Budgets often operate in the abstract until you spend the money, right? Are we going to have a separate discussion about the pool?
I don't believe that's the case. I asked that.
Well, we're not appropriating here,
No, but
I'm asking the question,
I-
how are we treating it?
I think if we vote this, we are recommending that the pool be open.
Fine.
By
Okay.
including
I
it in
just
the
wanted
budget, that's what we're
clarification.
saying.
I just wanted to make sure I heard
Is that,
it right.
is that everybody's
Yeah,
understanding?
Yeah, that would be my assumption.
Okay.
so it's $23,500 is the difference between what Anthony's budget in total is and what he actually requested.
So it brings it about to
128,000 even, yeah.
Okay.
So,
So we're clear on that.
is there anything else on the pool?
I guess I was just,
I didn't get that number. What did you say?
I don't want to be a
What?
Scrooge, but I was wondering about the towels.
This
Oh.
expenses that are
9,000.
not
Oh,
included, right, 23,500.
necessary since we had to decide whether we're going to proceed or not proceed. And I think there was a consensus.
Is that
We
9,000?
didn't really want to lose money, and if there was one way to maybe cut something to help the situation where we operate it and we operate it at least break even, that 9,000 might be a help. So
I
I'm
think we
just
were all there.
throw that out
Yeah.
there.
So is
Yeah,
there a
so
general
it's,
consensus
let's
that
make
we eliminate the towels and whatever costs are associated with the towels?
Get an estimate here.
So
I-
the
I'm
only
fine
question
with
I
that.
would have about that is,
It's 3,000.
there was discussion that night, would it be possible to run a towel service where people paid an additional fee? But I don't know how
Yeah,
we
yeah.
allow, because then you're using the, obviously, the dryers back to the gas,
Yeah.
which was a pretty large one. So are we saying that if we pass the budget, they're given another season at least to perform their, but at the same time, if we're passing it without towel service, we're eliminating towel service from the property, or are we allowing them to decide to be able to take private from the members or the members? See, it kind of gets interesting because you're talking about using those big machineries again and back to 6,000 or whatever it was of gas, 3,000.
But then you have to make up the
And they would also
9,000.
have to order towels, I'm assuming, because that's what the request was. So if the members are going to use it, are we saying we're not going to pay for it, but they can still use a towel service? Because there was discussion the other night
And we will charge them for the
that maybe they can
service?
charge for
Right, I
towel
remember.
service.
But
So
what would
I-
you charge
we-
per
we-
towel to make up
Well, we would have to
$9,000?
make a decision on whether or not they can
Wow.
even do that, because they'd be back to using
That's,
obviously dryers and the
A
towels.
lot of towels and a lot of money.
I think part of the problem, and for me anyway, in doing it this way and having this discussion is, these are good questions, but we're not getting the feedback from the stakeholder to say, if this is a, I don't want to cut their legs off either and say that they're not going to get members because there's no towel service.
Right.
So I would, maybe it would be wise to revisit that with
With them.
Anthony.
Well,
Or
I will
those,
say-
in charge,
Mhm.
so it was just something we had talked about and I didn't want to lose sight of it, but at the same time, we're asking good questions, but I don't know that we can answer those questions.
Right.
So I'll make a suggestion on that, and then I have another suggestion on the pool. How about if Tony and I speak with Anthony before the Board of Finance meets
Yes.
and make a recommendation to the Board of Finance based on that discussion?
Yes.
So that's how we'll handle that. So Tony and I have been speaking to some people and have come up with sort of a big idea on the pool, and I wanted to put it out there. It's different from what we've been talking about, and in some ways contrary to this effort we've been making to find savings wherever we can. However, the net pool costs are something like 90,000? Whatever it is, there were 45 Woodbridge families who were members of the club. And
The last season.
The last season. And
Not the
at-
season before.
no, right. And the number came out to something like $500 per family of town subsidy. And I was talking with someone, it was not an original idea, who said, how about for next summer that we just make the pool free for all Woodbridge residents? It would be a great gesture. I think people have told us how much they appreciate the pool, the people who go there. Tony's done a preliminary number run on it, and I think it would cost us, now again, this is preliminary, I can't say that we know exactly,
It's
but
good.
it would be about another $40,000
Approximately.
for the season, approximately. And we'd give every Woodbridge resident the opportunity to use the pool for nothing for this season. We would make it clear it's for this season. We'd have to talk about what kind of ID you would need. Perhaps we'd have a pass that you purchase at Town Hall, and maybe for a nominal fee, we'd make up a little bit of money from that. But it just seems it's such a large subsidy now for the families that use it. Why not add a little bit more and make it available for everyone free for one summer and see where that takes us? Tony has some numbers here. If you're interested enough, we'll distribute them to take a look.
I'm definitely interested.
Yeah,
in
me
it.
too.
Would you like to?
Let's
Yeah,
hear
I
it.
would be very interested in numbers.
Yeah.
Tony has them.
Yeah.
Is this hence the expression "everybody in the pool"? Is that
I-
where this comes from?
And I believe these numbers presume no towels. And
With no
you know,
towels.
I mean, it would be.
Bring your own.
Bring your own towel.
I mean, people don't have towels, but yes,
They couldn't, those machines can't even run there.
right.
Oh, thank you.
Well, the JCC deals with their towels. They
You
charge
pay, you pay for a towel?
Yeah, you pay for a towel or you bring your own.
Right.
And people don't seem to have a problem with that.
All right.
That's correct.
And so this
So that's
just,
the the towel issue. Go.
it just came up, so tomorrow, if this board is interested, we're going to be meeting with Anthony Taddy and Bob Hill, and we will talk more detail with them, if this is something that the board is interested in.
Right.
So
Now-
if everybody has it, you want to walk us through this?
Certainly.
Tony?
The requested budget here, so there's a series of columns here, including revenues and expenses. So the first column is the requested budget as you were originally handed out in the budget documents. So that the department had requested $19,502. That was their estimation on revenues. And then their requested budget was $104,500. Keeping in mind, it was missing $23,500. So I modified both of these to reflect a reduced revenue for pool fees based on last year's figure, and that's a little conservative, but the current year is 88,000. So you have 80,000 as an estimate there. Then there's the 128,000 that we were just discussing. So that's sort of the modified budget of which you were reviewing. The option one was in case you wanted to just have operations for half of the year, which is for pool operations this summer, but nothing for the spring. So it would match the country club facility. That's just for your information, just so that in case somebody asked that question, I have that information for you. Then the second one is for, as Ellen indicated, what it would cost for the pool to be to run this spring, this July through September, with nominally $5,000 in revenues for lessons or tent rentals, that sort of thing. So this is just for this season. I didn't calculate it for next spring.
So option two
Which I could
presumes,
do,
no,
but-
right, no cost to join, didn't include something for a permit or something like that, which we could include. And it
Right.
would be for the full pool, the full 2016 pool season.
Correct. Does not include 17.
Without 17.
And that's at full staffing levels?
That's what I have to
that we
check with Anthony.
Right, okay. so that's
Make
the
sure my
check that
assumptions are
part.
correct, because
Right.
assuming that you'll probably need full staffing levels, assuming you're going to have a
Right.
free.
Just
So,
to remind me,
have to
what
check
is
some
this?
of these.
It's May to September or?
yeah, it's May to September,
Ish,
Memorial Day
yeah,
and Labor Day-ish.
Ish, right.
Yeah. But it's not every day.
It's not every day.
Right, yeah,
Later.
it's an ish.
So Tony,
Yes.
this way. Option two, net operations are a loss of 68.3.
Correct.
Right.
Right. Just for that period, though. It's just for that July through September.
Right.
It's a big subdivision. Yeah.
Because this is impacting on this budget.
The modified is
Yeah.
based on 2 seasons, and the option 2 is based on 1 season.
Correct.
So you'd have
I
to,
understand, I'm just trying to
Double.
I'm trying to reconcile the 40,000.
Well, option one and option two are both just for the
Oh, the
2016
40,000 that she
season.
mentioned?
Yeah.
That's the difference. I didn't want to complicate this even
I
further.
don't see that on
Isn't it
this.
That's the difference, right, that's the difference between what I would have to do to modify this budget that you have already to make this option 2 a
Possible.
reality.
Well,
Right.
it's the difference between option one and option two. Option one and option two are both full 2016 season, right?
May
That's where
through
that's where I saw it.
September, or May through.
Whatever the season is, it would be the same
Whatever it is.
season.
Right.
Option one is proceeding as we have in the past with dues
Correct.
and payments and all
Right.
that. And option two is making it free. So it was the difference between
Oh,
21,668.
I see, so that's
That's-
47, so I see what you're talking about.
Oh, sorry, 40.
No, it's all right,
you're
but now I-
You're right, yeah,
46
yeah, yeah.
It's 47.
It was those two numbers that I,
So it would be in that neighborhood. I'd have to check some of these with Anthony, some of the assumptions,
also the assumption here is that
particularly the staffing.
Woodbridge residents are still
gonna
paying the same
pay fees.
numbers that the fee structure was set up as before.
That's a
'Cause there's
good
a
point.
number.
That's a good point, and we
That's a
didn't
good
include that
Where's
revenue.
the 52
Right.
come from then? Or the
Option one is if
52
there were memberships.
No,
Option-
50, the
Oh, the
5200 was
5275?
from lessons.
Yeah, there's tent rentals, lessons.
Yeah. Locker
Um,
fees maybe.
That's a good point.
Bags. We
Yeah, I'm
got-
just,
include some storage, lockers.
because I believe last
stuff
year
like
the
that.
numbers
So that
were,
doesn't include membership.
No.
Right, that's a good point.
no, so,
No.
because I believe last year, even though there was 40 some odd families that used the pool as a membership role, whether it was family, couple, individual,
Right.
there was another 20-something members, I don't know, Bethany, Orange, wherever they may come from. So I don't know, I think we at least have to take a look at what would their fee structure be. Would it be exactly the same? So it's kind of free.
And we can certainly refine this information if there's an interest.
I would be
You know.
very interested to know a few people's opinion on could we handle this
Yeah.
as far as with staffing,
Right.
how many people might use it.
Well, there is a capacity issue.
There is a
Right.
capacity, and
Right.
there's also a capacity and parking issue for Casper and the pool.
Right.
And there are days where that is very difficult.
Right.
So I would also maybe be even interested from hearing from Terry on what he thinks about that. I mean, parking's been an issue there from time to time. But I'm not saying it's not possible, just
Right.
maybe there's a solution
Right.
to shuttle, I don't know, whatever it may be.
The capacity issue is huge because, I mean, they have no capital. You know, if anything goes wrong because they overuse the pool or whatever that might be,
Well, how
I think
many,
there's a
dangerous.
limit on how much you can, there's a capacity, a legal capacity,
Yeah.
so I don't
Right.
think
How
that
many
would be an
people could
issue.
be in a
Would it be
pool in
first
one
come,
day,
first served?
safety-wise,
We'd
you
have
know?
to-
it's
Obviously,
probably
there's
different.
details to be worked out,
Yeah.
but it
What a-
did
What a
seem
great
like
way
an
to
intriguing
encourage
idea.
Woodbridge residents to
exactly, that sounds
see our
good to
pool.
me.
And one other
But how do you-
question, I'm sorry, go ahead, Joe.
What are you thinking first?
I know, it's
how
a,
do you turn?
Joe's head
I
has
know.
exploded.
I know, mine too, I just heard this, and I'm like, wow.
First come, first served.
Wow, we need a
This
lot
is
more
very
data.
interesting to explore, but my suggestion would be we have a lot of work to do.
Absolutely, right.
Yeah.
We have a lot to
And,
explore.
I do have one other question, though. My recollection is we have extended in the past resident status to Beecher employees and Amity employees, so that's another piece
That's another
that kind of
question.
came through.
That's another
Lots of
question.
pieces of the
And
puzzle.
how that
Right.
plays into it.
Well, what I thought was if there was no interest, that would be easy. And if there is
We never do
interest,
it easy.
then we
how
should
we
look
roll.
into that. And
I think it's a great idea.
I think we should make a decision about what we need to do tonight is we're making a recommendation to the Board of Finance.
Right.
So we can do it in a couple of different ways. We can recommend the budget as Tony has laid it out here, the modified fiscal year 17 budget.
Right.
I think that's what everyone
Yeah,
was
I think-
expecting
right.
this evening.
Right, right.
But to say to the Board of Finance that we're very interested in this other plan, and we will work on it in the meantime and bring the details to the Board of Finance, and then it will be their decision if they make that recommendation to the town. Is that
Right? Sounds
satisfactory?
I suppose there's no harm, we're just recommending
Yeah,
something.
recommending, yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
we'll just spend the time to get more details. Of
Hash
course,
it
let you
out.
all know what that looks like.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm not gonna complicate, it, but I just wanna make sure that's with the towels.
Your modified version.
My goodness.
Wanted to make sure.
Your
So-
modified version, the budget's with the towels, and you're still gonna, based on some
Got
information
it.
you're gonna gather,
Yeah.
decide whether you should recommend the towel
That's
service or
already
not
done.
to the Board of
Got it.
Finance.
Okay, so the Board of Finance
The
has a lot of
the
pull work to
modified
do.
has towels, right?
Yes.
And it's
Modified.
with bathing suits, that's
Okay.
for sure. Okay. But
All
bathing
right,
suits, no.
so we're going with modified fiscal year 17
Got it.
budget with those numbers, but we'll be looking into this new proposal, getting the information to the Board of Finance and to the Board of Selectmen as soon as we have it.
Okay,
Okay?
So we would need to make another recommendation on this department to the Board of Finance.
We could.
Well, I
I mean,
don't see any other way of doing it.
Yeah.
Because if, not that I really like this process, but the process is, we recommend this budget to them.
we could
But
do
we're
that.
really saying we're recommending the modified, but we're gonna keep looking in. So I think we have to then recommend this department.
We could do that. We could
Same
come
time.
together again and take a look at the data
Yeah,
as soon as we
I
have
have
it.
no
Yeah, I would
problem
wanna
with
talk
either.
about it and recommend
Okay.
separately.
So
Yeah.
so does
Yeah.
that mean we want to keep the recommendation out of this process for the moment and hold it back?
I think we should go, let's
Go
keep
forward
this,
with it
I would
and then
recommend
just
that we
keep
go
talking.
ahead with
Okay.
this, so we have
Have to
something in
recommend the
there,
budget
and
by
then,
With the
No, I meant
February.
just this part.
because we have
When do they
Then we
meet?
have to work it
March
out.
2nd. We
Okay.
can get it together before that
Okay,
and get
that's
to
Yeah, yeah.
That makes sense.
Cool.
Any other big ideas for the pool?
And they won't make their, they won't make their final recommendation to the town until
A preliminary budget hearing?
April, end of March.
Right.
Yeah, we have time.
So you have plenty of
Yeah,
time.
Plenty of
to-
time, but
Yeah.
I just think
Right.
procedurally and formally, we
Sure.
should recommend what
That's
we
fine.
really want to recommend.
I don't
Yeah.
disagree with you.
No
That's
problem.
right.
So
Tony's right.
the other issue is, we just ended any membership, anybody from signing up a membership between now and whenever we make our decision. So we do have to
It's gonna
eventually
be
give.
quick, though.
We still have to get it to the
We
Board
have
of
to
Finance
do it.
anyway.
We have to do it,
agree.
because I think
Week
we
and a
just
half.
put word out there that hold up on your membership.
Yeah.
because-
Karen had a question.
No, I just was
Oh.
gonna say that the Board of Finance typically will meet on March 2nd, and then at their regular meeting on March 17th, if there's anything else that they wanna look at, they can do it on March
Yeah.
17th as
So we'll
well.
try to get this resolved at the Board of Selectmen level before March 2nd. Okay,
Works
good,
for me.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Soon.
Okay, Thomas Darlinghouse, anything there?
Did you do library?
Did I skip library?
No, it's next.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a page.
No, it's after Darling.
Nothing.
Okay, now we're at library. Anything on library?
Nothing in the operating end.
Conservation Commission.
Same.
Economic Development, oh, I'm sorry, Marie, did you,
No,
I'm sorry to hear
I
you.
like the proposed, the revision there and the Conservation Commission.
Economic Development Commission? Inland Wetlands.
The only one question I had for that was part-time clerical, just an adjustment on hours type.
Yeah, that was just an adjustment on where I think that they're gonna be this year and possibly reflects an actual as opposed to a budget.
Employee fringe benefits. Any questions?
This is another one tied to
We don't know.
contracts, right?
Is this also the health insurance? We don't know yet either? That
Correct.
usually is later.
That's
Correct, yeah, that's also tied
part
to
of
the
it.
contracts.
Okay.
Yeah.
debt service is, debt service is debt
It is
service.
what it
No,
is.
no.
Right.
Is there any questions? Any questions on that? Woodbridge Board of Education. Amity Board of Education, again, we have no say over that budget in any event, so. That's
There's a
that.
vote, right, for the public
Usually the day after our budget.
in May.
Oh, it's a referendum. Yes, the
Right,
referendum
that's right.
in
Referendum
May.
in May, so the
on the
voters
Amity
get to
budget.
decide on this budget.
Yes, yes, and there'll be plenty of information about the percent
Right.
increase. And again, our percent increase is quite high at 6.86%, but that's not because the Amity budget went up
Right.
so significantly. It's because we have more Woodbridge students and a larger proportion of students. The other towns went down and our population went up, so our share of the budget went up. And as Tony has reminded me, different years, it goes the other way.
Correct.
Our
Right.
Some
portion
years
goes
it's been
down, and
flat,
so,
right.
but again, it's not that the budget itself went up by such a large
Right.
percentage.
Right.
And to Beth's question, I believe in years before we've looked at, gee, wouldn't it be nice if their referendum happened before our budget, but because of Orange, when they do theirs,
Bethany
it could
Orange
never
Grove,
be
right,
worked out.
Right.
We could never.
Because it always seems like,
It's
gee,
always-
can't we move it up 2 days?
I think it's
so
often
they
the
can
day
do it?
after.
Yeah, it all happens like right after.
You know?
And there was no way for us
It's
to change
after
it
our
in years past.
municipal election.
We certainly
for
look
sure.
into it.
It's not the municipal election,
Yeah.
but the town meeting's not till the.
The
Right.
town our actual
You can make
meeting,
the change
it's
in the
after
town
the
meeting.
municipal election, the day after
Oh, that's
usually.
right, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you make the change at the town
Right,
meeting.
yeah.
Right, but then our regular annual town meeting is in
Right.
May, like the
Correct,
third
the third
Monday or
Monday,
something,
right,
yeah.
right.
So there is time,
Yeah.
For that, yeah.
right.
So,
Which is
Tony,
what
did we
impacts this
complete
budget.
everything before we vote?
Good, yeah.
So should we move, so now, should we move to the capital budget?
Sure.
All right. Few pages down is the capital budget.
That's in more detail, that's this capital budget form here. And it has, the department requests is the first line, and then the Board of Selectmen recommended would be the second column under that year.
So maybe we should just go through these.
Sure.
You want to just talk about each one?
Yep.
These are more substantial than some of the other changes.
The first change was to the revaluation reserve. We sort of just spread it out a little more over the 3 years, so that there wasn't such a huge impact in the first year.
Right, it was 30, so you did 16 basically for about 3 years or two
Right.
and a half. yeah,
Right, so it's 10, 10, 30, right.
Whatever it worked out to be.
Board of Education, there's a $15,000 reduction in technology and removal of the driveway, the access driveway, which is the one that goes around the back of the school. You want to just go through them all and then, or do you want
Well, I guess maybe we should, if you have any comments, or as Tony goes along, please just let us know, or questions.
I have a question under the Board of Ed, the kitchen equipment. They requested this to begin in 2018?
That's
Okay.
2019, yeah.
2019.
We didn't
sorry.
make any changes to that.
Great, got it. Can't remember. Okay, lot of numbers. Thank you.
Yeah, my big question is on the next one. I'm
The Board of
looking to
Selectmen?
Find out how we came to that, those numbers. The
Which-
Board of
which-
Selectmen,
Board of
yes.
Selectmen, okay, let's start that one. Firehouse restoration is, as recommended by the building committee that exists, or the, right, Beth, that's the last, you remember that committee? So the $500,000 is the steep grant, and then the balance, which was recommended by the committee, back a few years back. And these are essentially to, put these on this plan for discussion, so that they remain part of the capital plan for the town, so that you try to keep all your capital needs in one spot.
Yeah, these
You know.
two under Board of Selectmen were not discussed at hearings. We're
Right.
not on our budget.
So we put those in
And-
because these are projects,
Yeah, and I
so they have, you should
I've
at
been
least
kind of
discuss
waiting
them.
for a report from committees that are going to look at the town center and the radio system.
Uh-huh.
So I would not feel comfortable whatsoever adding them to this year's
Yeah,
capital.
you don't have to, you can move
without
around, I just put them in
we
there
haven't even
for,
heard a report on them yet.
we just put them there for discussion, so you could at least have them in your plan, and then you could certainly.
Yeah, I'd be
push them
much
out.
more comfortable
Yeah.
putting them outward a year, even if it was on 18, but you know,
Sure.
somewhere in the 6-year, but not in this year.
Keep in mind, these are, both of these projects are, in this plan, either with grant funds or bonded funds.
Mhm.
So this is simply for planning purposes as to why these are here. Because when you use bonded funds, as you know, you need a separate process to approve them anyway.
Right.
Which is, the voting
So it's a
process.
placeholder.
So it's just it's a planning tool
Right.
for either the public or the rating agencies or the state or whoever else wants to see our finances, to see what our capital needs are up in the next 6 years. That's what that is.
Tony,
So-
I'm sorry, on
Sure.
the $500,000 for the firehouse restoration,
Mhm.
is that steep grant? Or
Yes,
is that?
that's a steep
So, and do we have time to delay that if we don't keep it in?
It's it expires in 2018.
So we can?
You can, yeah.
Mhm, okay.
I think it's the summer, June, I think.
Yeah, I think we discussed that.
Yeah. So you see all the steep grants are there.
Right.
Yeah, there's one in animal control.
Right.
I see sitting up there.
Correct.
Yay.
Right, so to that
Haven't
point,
gotten it yet.
if we don't get the steep
It'll
grant,
come out.
we're not approving.
No, you're not approving it. It's just a, again, it's a capital plan of expenditures that
We're
you
not
plan
approving
on.
anything. It's just.
Bond stuff, this is not
It's a
approving
planning
any.
document.
You don't,
Right.
for bonded items. The ones you are approving
Are the ones.
are the bolded items.
Bolded items,
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, and some of these, we actually have the grant in our pocket, and others we're
Correct, you're applying
still
for.
applying for.
Right. You are approving the bolded items, but not the bonded items, which are not bolded.
So we're at building maintenance, unless there's anything else
Is
before
there any
that?
adjustments to the Board of Selectmen items? Anyone wants to suggest?
Well, I
Push
suggest,
them out a year,
for
you said?
planning's sake, they pushed out a year so that they are included in the 6 year, because in essence, by putting them in for this year, but then they're not going to be acted on this year, we know that. So we're kind of approving them for this year, but the truth is, we know they can't be acted on this year, so the earliest they can be acted on would be, I would rather push them out into
18?
the following year when they actually might be able to be performed. And we will have to at least do something about that firehouse. grant by then.
Right.
So I
On the
just feel
firehouse-
more comfortable that's the right year to put it in.
On the firehouse, are you suggesting that they both go out a year or to combine them into 18?
And
I
the
think-
radio upgrade too?
I think
You
they,
got 632 already in 18, so if you
Right.
switch, you're saying.
yeah, I think they both go in because there will be still
Push them both out?
632 out of possibly our, or
Correct.
the 500,000
Right.
is the steep. So that
Right.
you could add it into that number with 500,000 having
could.
that asterisk
Yeah.
of the steep.
That's fine.
And then the 1,500 going as well.
Yep, 15, 1.5.
I'm sorry, 1.5 million into the
And
radio
that's-
upgrade slot.
That's, and that is just to provide an estimate, but we'll get more information on that, and then you could refine that number through the process as we go.
Because the radio upgrade, it's possible the radio upgrade will come up in the
Exactly.
next year, but that doesn't prevent us from
But
doing
we're
it.
not,
No,
we're not
this is-
voting
this is-
on it.
You're not voting.
And
This
that's-
is
We're not
just
voting, so we're.
for
we keep
planning
it.
purposes.
We're still not approving it.
Yeah, I understand that, but for planning's sake and to keep it in there rather than basically have it removed and put it back in, I just think it belongs in the following year.
Here's where it helps me whenever I do industry spreadsheets, whenever I do reporting, whenever I do fiscal indicators, all that stuff. I use what's in this plan as a basis for my bond interest and principal payment schedules. So this helps to have, this information. That's all.
Where it is.
Yeah.
Wait, where it is or?
No, it doesn't matter
as accurate
wherever you
as
put it.
be.
Then I'm going to make my assumptions based on where you
Adjustments
put it.
based on it, yeah.
Where
Right.
it
So if you
is.
put it in 18,
Yeah, I would
then
just
I'll
think it'd be more
figure.
accurate for that time and for
Yeah.
you.
So it's
to do
helpful where you
plan.
put it.
Okay, so I would think next year makes it a little more accurate and a little more likely for your planning purposes.
Mhm.
Because the truth is, it's not gonna come this year.
Right.
Well, except you just heard otherwise, I don't know.
Well, I know that the radio, there's been a lot of discussion about the radio, certainly when we had the budget presentations, we heard that both police and fire are very concerned about the radio. So it may come up, but again, this doesn't, it doesn't preclude us from doing it if it comes up. I think this is really, it's
No,
not
I think
it's
hugely
reasonable,
important either
yeah.
way.
But to your
So-
point, we heard that last year, and we actually asked for a committee, and there was a committee started to look at it. But since we've not heard any reports or updates, I certainly, unless maybe other people at this table have information I don't have any information to say we're even an inch closer, other than the emergency of the radio going down, in which case we would have to make
Yeah, the
arrangements. So I'm just saying, for planning purposes, since we haven't had an opportunity to do that, have that discussion, I would rather have it out there for Tony's purposes and for, I guess, my own, for next year, since I don't see any action coming during the year, other than an emergency, which we deal with.
Well, I think since it doesn't really matter, if you're more comfortable, and if there's no objection, we'll move it out a year.
No,
Fine,
that's fine.
fine, we'll move those both out a year.
Fine.
Okay.
Yep. Building maintenance. There's a the building maintenance vehicle was for an addition. Was for we figured we pushed out to 2019 based on the age of the current vehicle and the life expectancy of that vehicle. The mobile file system we eliminated as something that would be nice to have, but is not necessary. There was also a reduction, given the fact that the Darling House has a roof replacement coming up. There was a reduction of the other improvements that were requested in the budget.
So in your
So there'll still
plan
be-
here, you did keep the full amount for the roof replacement?
Correct. It's something. The roof
That's
replacement
pretty
funded.
urgent, as I
Yeah,
understand
right.
it, so that has to be done, yeah.
But the other improvements were reduced.
So can I just ask you, going back to the maintenance vehicle?
Sure.
We put it out, you changed it and moved it out a couple years.
Right.
What was is it in need of repair?
No, not
So we
really.
just think we can put it off 2 years from their request?
Based on the mileage and based on the condition, and
So it's not,
they were requesting sort of a different approach here. They were requesting an additional vehicle.
Oh,
We didn't
I see.
think an additional vehicle was necessary.
Right.
Rather, the current vehicle is probably going to need to be replaced in the next 3 years,
Okay.
which is what that is.
so you didn't really put it out 2 years, it's different.
Correct.
It happens to be the same amount under the
Correct.
same line item.
It's the same type of vehicle, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this 84.1 is in the operating budget?
Correct. You'll see, I can show you how the two sheets tie together at the end.
I'll look.
Yeah.
Okay. Country Club of Woodbridge?
So, all the items were removed on here except the one we were thinking of was the keeping in there was the allowance for the bunker sand, but there was a note, Karen, right, that Casper said that they would fund that this year out of their budget. So all the others were removed.
I saw a bunch of trees down.
Yeah.
They asked for 8,000. Did they have money from?
I think.
They took a bunch of trees down, so I guess I'm just asking. We
I
didn't
think
fund
that was
that.
privately funded. It
Yeah, I'm not
wasn't from the town.
I don't recall exactly.
It was just done
I
recently,
don't think
right?
so.
You saw?
Yeah.
You're talking
I think
like
didn't
recently,
Adam
right?
help them?
Yeah, we definitely helped them.
They took them down and we removed them, or
Yeah.
it was- I
Billy
think that's
Casper
what it was.
took
I'm
it
not sure. That is Billy Casper
Okay.
took it.
Billy
down.
Casper,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think so.
So just to recap, we removed every item from their request
For this year.
for this year.
Just for this year,
This
right?
year. Okay, anything else on that? We're at Fire Commission.
The adjustment to the fire commission was our main radio, which ties into the item earlier, the radio upgrade, and that most likely that's a project that'll be bonded as we did last time and not funded through the operating budget, and so that's why that was removed.
Right.
Okay. Anything else? Information systems, Tony?
The campus Wi-Fi, while that was something that we had put forward after seeing the budget figures, decided that's something that could probably wait, and it's not a necessity. So we removed it.
You can just keep going there. Anything on that?
No.
No, okay. Library?
Library, the carpet in the children's area was just moved out a year to 2018.
Parks?
In the Parks Department, the irrigation for center field was removed.
And that was removed outright.
Right, and we didn't actually discuss whether we wanted to put that out in a future year or to just remove it outright. But,
Well, why
Do you wanna
wouldn't we put it into some, as a planning tool?
yeah, we probably should put it out in a future year.
Placeholder
Yeah.
in the
Yep.
future, maybe, yeah, someplace.
So,
And we also might want to talk to Adam about it because there has been a change because he's not going to use the type of little that he needed
Nematodes.
more water for. The
Nematodes.
nematodes needed
Right.
more water.
Correct, that's
and
right,
his
yeah.
new system may not need as
Exactly.
much water, so
So I'll put it
maybe
in
that affects
2018.
us even
Okay.
needing it as much. I'm sure it's nice to have them.
That way it's.
Maybe we don't
Okay,
need
so
it.
that's moving
But
to
he needed it
2008.
before, if you remember,
Yeah,
with those nematodes.
okay, so we'll move that to
that's fine.
2018.
Yeah.
Police?
Police, there were no changes.
Oh, right.
We just,
Nothing that's,
The
Nothing
only thing we
bold
did
in
was
the
move the
bold,
we moved the building out. We kept the $500,000 in 17, but moved the rest of it out.
And that's that steep grant they have as well.
Right.
And I know I've asked you this every time, and I always forget. The police steep grant.
That's
This date on that expired?
it's. I just saw that today. It was. I think it's March of 2018. Does that sound right, Jerry? Yeah.
Okay, so we'd have to
And you'd have to
figure that out
spend
next year.
the steep grant. You don't have to spend any more than that in order to get the steep grant. You just have to spend on the eligible item.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's the area that's what you left in, is my point.
Right.
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 Okay.
Public Works.
Public Works, there were two adjustments. First is to the Bridge and Waterways Fund. Now that we're finished with the Merritt Avenue Bridge and we're wrapping that process up, the $20,000 was removed from that fund. I think should be okay there. The second was the equipment reserve. Now this is the sweeper. You'll see it's zero. But the reason was because if we go forward with the sweeper, then we would have to go through a process of bidding it and for procurement process and ordering it. It's sort of similar to the fire truck, although not quite as long. And so most likely this interest payment won't be till the payment if we were to
So it's a
reset.
lease purchase thing?
Right.
Same kind of spread out and.
Right.
okay.
So the
Would
payment,
be
You don't
the
pay
following
till-
year.
You've had
Put off
it, you have
for
it
a
a year
year.
before you
Right.
pay for
but
it,
you
right?
still
Which is kind of
believe,
cool.
timing-wise, that we could actually purchase and get the vehicle for our usage
For the,
for
for
this,
that, for that fall, that,
for the upcoming
correct.
Soon enough
summer.
to save the
Correct.
19,000.
July on.
Right.
Right, which is
Right,
typically, the
that's
Seabrook's not
my
used till the
point,
following
because we're gonna need
April.
it in July.
It's not used usually until the
Right.
following April.
So we could, you believe,
After
getting
the
it
winter
in our
season.
hands, possibly if we decide to buy it by
Correct.
July,
Yes.
use it, but our payments won't be till after January.
Correct.
Or after the following July.
That's
Right.
correct.
Got it.
That's correct.
And then the other is the road construction reserve.
Oh, right.
Yes.
It was just a slight reduction there
Mm-hmm.
to make it to what last year's was.
Anything on public works? Okay, waste management,
The scale.
scale.
This was something we discussed.
Recreation.
Oh, did we make, I'm
Oh.
sorry, did we make any changes on it?
No, it was the
Yeah.
same.
There were,
Got
yeah,
it.
there were
Five
changes, sorry.
Yep, got it, thanks.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Can't read fast enough.
The scale, for up at the transfer station.
This was a tough decision.
Because ultimately, the
It's-
scale generates money.
Correct,
It's a good investment, but it just seemed like this was not the year to make it.
right.
You know, it's something that we don't have to have. It's.
But it would, you're right, it's a good investment.
It's a good investment.
Right.
but
Likewise, should we put that into other years where it's,
That's a good idea.
Yeah, good idea, yeah.
Yes.
Which year?
I'll put it in
Put
Where
it
here.
in.
that
18.
field
Yeah.
would go, has there ever been a site engineering plan for where the placement would be?
No,
No?
no.
Just curious.
I don't, not that I'm aware of, unless Warren has one.
Okay.
Is any effect at all, or I should have first asked, is there any update at all that we'll be getting, you think, soon on what's happening as far as the solar panels and solar field?
At the landfill.
I think that's coming soon.
I
next
think
month,
it
if
partly
you-
depends on what the legislature does, because we ran into a roadblock. There's a cap on how many units of electricity can be produced under virtual net metering, where you produce it at one place and you use it another place, and that cap has been reached. So we're one of about a little less than a dozen towns who are on a waiting list, and we've been working with our state delegation. They were here, if you recall. We talked to them about it, and there is a bill pending. I just got a notice about the bill, and we'll send in support for it that would either lift the cap or shift some of the available credits to municipalities from the state, which hasn't been using them. So at this point, we can't go ahead, but I'm hoping that we will.
Okay.
While we're on that though, the microgrid is moving along. Tony's
Right.
having regular meetings now, and it looks
Right.
like that will be soon. So Tony, I think at this point we can vote on the budget with the changes, the
Let's do
capital and
revenues.
operating budgets.
Okay.
You want to do, and then we'll do revenues?
That's fine.
Is that fine?
That's fine, yeah.
Okay. So,
No.
Sorry,
No, I'm
okay,
sorry. I was just thinking.
okay. So is there a motion to recommend to the Board of Finance the operating and capital budgets that we've just discussed and seen in the packets with, there were about 3 or 4 changes? Do you have those? that you-
I have two,
Two?
Karen. The
I-
monetary changes
Maybe just amendments.
Not-
We have to say how many?
was the recreation director
Yes.
and the additional pool expenses that you were gonna do in lieu of.
And everything else was years, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay, everything else was just, is that it?
Right.
I think.
Okay.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
aye, but only because it's a recommendation.
Addition, right? It's not the approval of the budget.
Right.
I don't really,
Well, we
If
don't
I
approve the
would-
budget.
That's
We
our,
don't approve.
that's our
Town
only,
does.
that's
I
our
just don't
role.
want it
It's our
to
only
be
role.
construed that I'm approving this
Yeah.
budget, that's all, because I think it's getting a little,
Well, the motion is to
Fire
recommend,
field.
to fulfill our duties under the town charter, and that is to make a recommendation to the Board of Finance with respect to the budget. And that's what we've voted on. Has everyone voted? I don't know, Maria, did you vote yes? Yes.
Yeah, we
Yes?
voted, I think.
Okay.
But now,
we voted.
since we're after,
Everyone voted aye.
yes.
Aye.
You know, Joe and I discussed and brought it up maybe a year and a half ago or something. I think the Board of Finance was here that night, looking at zero-based budgeting for some of the other departments, looking at some of the other ways of maybe giving more of a flow and a direction for the departments. I think we have to talk as Board of Selectmen about
The process.
suggesting the role. I understand how the process works in our town, and certainly we just make a recommendation. But I think, this, even though the Board of Finance will probably find some additional cuts where they're willing to make, I think we're getting at a level here where we can't keep recommending to the town these kind of increases to our debt service. And we need, I think, as a board, to start thinking about giving direction for next year's budget on whether that becomes, we talk about a certain percentage of increase that we're looking non-salary, but or that we're looking to try to use zero-based budgeting to try to bring down some of the amounts. But, we just recommended that the Board of Finance take a look at this budget that is now $49 million of operating expense, or close to it, 48.5, and another, well, we did just remove a couple million from this year's capital, but another few million of capital. And our 6-year plan says we have 5 million of capital in some years or more. I think we need to give a direction. I understand the process, but I still think that the Board of Selectmen can offer a direction and directives to departments, or to how we go about looking at the budget starting with next year's budget. I realize it's late in the game this year. We've talked about it in the past. There was talk that maybe we would have those conversations about possibly zero-based budgeting, or about a budgetary plan that's not actually asking the departments to go do something, but giving them a directive. So I would like to see that happen at the board level, and have a meeting about how we might proceed with that, and whether we want to include the Board of Finance in that meeting, that would be up to the first selectman, but I'd like to see that happen way before the budget. I mean, this is going to have to get through, this is going to have to be approved by the town, but during that process, I'd like us to start thinking about how can we look towards giving different directive for next year and following years, because our debt service is frightening.
Right.
What we've taken on in the last couple of years, and we all know that the projects were passed and needed, and we have more coming at us. I mean, we clearly have the fire department, we clearly have with the trucks that we're going to need, we clearly have the police department rebuild or refurbish. We're looking at quite a few $1 million coming our way, and our mill rate's getting 40% scary. I'm sorry, it's scary, and we're all part of it, but not a lot we can do, but there's definitely some things we can do.
So any suggestions that you have are very welcome. I'm not sure what you mean by zero-based budgeting, but maybe we'll have a meeting where you...
Both our
Excuse
Board of
me,
Educations use it.
Not any differently from what we do. Tony's spoken with them many times. We do the same kind of zero-based
Well, then
budgeting
I'll be
as the
happy
Board
to
of
agree.
Ed. So
We can talk about that.
I totally agree. We want to control the budget to the greatest extent possible. We do have a town where people expect first-rate services, and certainly first-rate education. Again, 2/3 of our budget is education, 1/3 is Amity, over which we have no control. I say that not to say that I'm open to any good and solid suggestions about how we reduce spending. If that's what we do, I personally think we do need to look at the country club. That was a big expense that we never expected, that was never planned for. Our other, we just approved a $13 million improvement to Beecher Road School. That's a major improvement. And there were many decades when the town of Woodbridge made no improvements. That's why we see this very high debt service, and believe me, I don't like to see it. So if there are ways we can budget better, I think that would be terrific. We probably should do that with the Board of Finance and see what they think, so I welcome those suggestions.
I remember you said that, I did a year and a half, whatever, and I actually took a peek at most of the budgets, and if you look at line item by line item by line item, most of them are zeros. It's the
That's not what it means.
I understand that, but
That's not what you're...
I understand, I totally understand. But as Ellen said, 2/3 of our budget is education, and we have to really think hard and long about,
Well, that's right.
I think that most of the town departments did a fabulous job keeping the budget as low as they could. We're in the middle of negotiations with regarding health insurance, and we have to start earlier, if, you know,
Well, I think part of what I'm looking for is planning, and I do think, to Ellen's point,
what would you do now? If
well,
you-
I don't
We
think,
went through this
I'll
whole
be honest
budget.
with you, I
What
don't
would you
think we've
change?
created a plan here for fire trucks, I don't think we've planned, I think years go by and there's really no plan for the police department or the fire trucks. We know it's out there. We knew the public, now, I wasn't part of this and you weren't either, but we knew the public works building was coming for 20 years. We knew Beecher Road School was coming for 25 years. If you keep putting off, part of the planning does take on more debt, but you can distribute it better. I mean, we're at one point gonna put it on Tony that, okay, find a way to distribute 50 million over, and it's just not possible. I think the planning, and those are hard steps, and we may have to make very hard decisions, including maybe saying no to something, and the other possibilities, saying yes can be hard. We know it takes on debt. But I don't wanna keep putting off the police department or the fire trucks and eventually have an emergency situation where you end up overpaying, typically not doing the proper planning for it. We know we have other planning in town that we could actually assimilate into it, and the club being included, the center of town with the old firehouse. I mean, a lot of these things have been lingering for years, and to be honest with you, I think we have to put our foot to the pedal and find a way to come up with a plan with some of these things. And if it means that we're gonna have to spend more money, but can plan it out so that we figure out on how we're gonna go about the bonding or how we're gonna go about the spending, the better we are.
So I think that if we sit down and do this, you will find that Tony has led us in a very, very productive, careful, and planning way. I understand the feeling, believe me, it just seems like an awful lot. But that's why we look out over time, and there actually, in my talking with Tony, there have only been 2 occasions when there was large bonded projects that were unanticipated. One was the oil spill out here, and one was the country club, and they were large expenses. But I don't say that to in any way negate the importance of having a conversation and going over it, because I've spent so many hours now coming up to speed, and I think the board needs to do that. Another problem we have is that it takes so long for the town to decide. Somebody said the other day, every project in Woodbridge takes 20 years. So we've had a town center plan, and since we came into office, the 3 of us, Joe's raised the question, I think rightly so, well, I don't know that I like this plan. Well, so it's not our plan, but it's been worked on for 15 years. And so what happens is the plans that we have become out of date. But again, all of this is ripe for discussion, and I'm happy to do it. So why don't we'll set aside some special meetings, when we get through the budget process. I assume there's nothing that you're suggesting for this budget.
No.
If there is,
Right.
you would have done that. And I think
really
that's fine.
think going forward, we should start earlier, like,
Yes,
once this is
definitely.
done,
Yep.
dig down,
I
don't
think if we have
do it
those
tonight.
special meetings and we understand the process that goes behind the scenes. Because, here's what we do. The folks come in, we have the joint meetings, and we listen to them, and that's all fine and good.
Right.
And then we just did what we do tonight, and we recommend to the Board of Finance, and they set the budget. We don't, when Beth says, well, we just went through it all, well, I don't know what we went through. Tony scrubbed it. I don't know what the departments do, and trust me, they all do agree. I'm not denigrating anybody, I just don't understand it. I don't know how they build their budgets. I think a lot of it looks, because they're zeros, I see the same number year to year. That is not taking a good look at a budget and saying, hey, just because I did that last year doesn't mean that this year, especially in a tough budget, I can't get away with a little less. So for me anyway, it would help if I really, to start a conversation, kind of really understood what's going on behind the scenes.
I totally understand. It takes a huge amount of time. Maybe what we need to do is spend a Saturday and have as for starters, have a full day, really, like a retreat.
do a
and
retreat,
just talk
right.
about
That's a good
the
idea.
budget.
Once we
Maybe
understood
we'll
it,
get
we
somebody.
could brainstorm some
Yep.
things.
That's fine.
It's
Okay,
hard.
we have a little more work to
You
do
know,
tonight.
I don't
No, I
disagree
hear
with you,
you.
this
Not
is
easy.
hard,
It's not easy.
it's very hard.
I can
So
assure you, though,
just
we have
approve-
wonderful, we have a wonderful finance director and finance department, and it should give you confidence, not to say that we can't spend more time. There's so much to it, and as I said, when we get these papers and it's all put together, it seems like, oh, well, that was pretty easy, but Tony spends many hours and has set up a system that I think works very well for the town. So we'll definitely follow up on that. Tony, now we need to do
Revenues.
revenues, and that is
That's
in
the
your
sheet.
packets.
Yeah.
This one. I don't think I have it. I must have, or maybe it's elsewhere.
Isn't it in
No.
the binder? Have you looked at it? Oh, here it is.
It is the one that sent you that.
Here it is. No,
The last page, yeah, there it is.
I got it.
Got it?
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, are you all set on revenues? Yeah,
Yes.
the revenue estimate page?
Thanks.
These are your revenue estimates for the year. I will go through them and the assumptions on these. The intergovernmental, let's start there. These are revenues based on the governor's budget with two major exceptions. The first is the car tax issue, which we're still working on with other towns and with the state to try to figure out the best way to implement that. And secondly, there was an extra 250 approximately $1,000 of sales tax revenue that was supposedly going to be directed to the town, but the general consensus of many of the towns that I speak with is most towns are not budgeting for that
Oh.
because they're not likely to get that, at least this early in the process. As the process goes on up in Hartford, maybe we'll have better direction on that. So that's something that we keep an eye on. The non-current tax revenue is all based on experience and on where we think the following year will be, namely with prior property tax revenue from prior years and delinquent interest. The department charges were all recommendations submitted by the departments. There are some areas where I have adjusted based on where the current year is, and after speaking with the department heads, you'll see there was this increase to building permits, and a slight increase to conveyance taxes. Also a reduction, as we discussed earlier, to the country club pool fees. That's impacted there. You'll see it as $80,000. That'll be reflected in the discussion you have at a later date. Let's see. In the other category, of course, this is the two major items here include the Amity surplus funds, which is currently where the surplus is at. We received $313,000, but currently 213 of it, or 220 of it, is earmarked for the Board of Ed and Woodbridge for their overage in their current year. So it leaves about $100,000 for next year's budget. So I put that in there for the moment. We will keep an eye on that as the Board of Finance progresses. And also there's fund balance appropriation, which we discuss every year. It is at $400,000. Finally, there's an uptick, largely due to UI activities in police private duty, which is the revenues from police private duty, which go to cover everything from payroll taxes to retirement charges to any expense that the town has, plus an admin fee on top of that.
Any questions for Tony?
Yeah. The first question I have is, and I realize we don't know exactly yet, do you have any feel or sense of the hit we'll take with the car mill rate cap?
If the calculations are correct, if we get the amount of money that they say we're going to get back for that, it shouldn't be a huge hit. Less than 100,000, could be 50,000, around there.
Is that a subjective? The
Ballpark.
state's going to decide? No, I mean as far as...
No, there's a formula.
there is
that's
a
already,
formula.
It's a
That's already
formula, yeah.
published.
So if the formula stays what they projected at, you
Right.
think it'd only be about 50,000.
Yeah,
I may say only, but
Yeah,
But if
Don't
the second sales tax pool of money comes in, will be net positive.
yes, we'll be net positive, correct.
But
To date, not many towns are budgeting for that.
right. Okay.
anything else? So we need to vote to
Yes,
Adopt the-
We didn't budget for the negative either.
not yet, no.
No, we didn't touch
No.
that part of it at all. so-
No.
I'm sorry, Joe, I didn't.
The
No, I
negative
was
part.
asking, I thought I just heard that if, per the formulation, if that holds true, we would take a little bit of a hit, like 50
Correct,
grand. But
right.
that's not in our
It's
budget.
not in here yet, no.
So it's
The
positive, or
negative,
nothing's in the budget.
Right.
Anything else? If not, is there a motion to adopt the revenue estimates as presented?
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Is there anything else you need us to do?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Well, then, thank you all very much. We'll come up with some more pool information, and we'll have a special meeting to discuss it. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, third.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.